Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Why on earth are the world's most powerful nations suddenly scrambling for control of a massive icy territory? Well, it's a crazy story of shifting power, buried treasure, and a ticking environmental clock. Remember back in 2019 and then again recently in 2024, when the US proposed actually acquiring Greenland for national security? Now, at the time, Danish leadership called the whole idea absurd. But actually, scratch that. If you look past the headlines and really dig into the data, that proposal reveals a deeply logical, albeit highly controversial, geopolitical reality. So you really have to ask yourself, why is the world's most powerful nation absolutely obsessed with an icy island populated by just 57,000 people? Let's peel back the layers of this mystery together and see how climate change, history, and a modern rush for critical minerals are all colliding right now, literally on top of the ice. Section 1. An offer to buy Greenland. To really get this superpower obsession, you have to grasp the sheer, staggering scale of the landmass we're talking about. I mean, Greenland is the size of Western Europe, yet it's home to only about 57,000 inhabitants. To the superpowers, it looks like this massive, empty frontier just ripe for the taking. But, to the 57,000 people who live there, it's home, and they're watching their entire environment change right before their eyes. In fact, in Greenlandic, there's a specific word, sikukangitsok. It literally means a sea with no ice. It's an incredibly strong word, and locals say it strikes absolute fear into the hearts of hunters. Keep this concept of a melting sea in the back of your mind as we go, because it is the ultimate key to understanding everything else we're going to talk about. Section 2, America's Strategic Arctic Hub. You see, the U.S. interest in Greenland isn't just some modern political talking point. It's actually a strategic maneuver dating back over a century. The initial interest started way back in the 1860s. By World War II, since planes couldn't refuel in midair, Greenland became this vital stopping point. Plus, weather reports from the island were absolutely crucial for planning D-Day. Then, post-WW2, the Truman administration actually offered $100 million in gold to buy the island. Why? Well, during the Cold War, the absolute shortest trajectory for a nuclear missile between the US and Russia was right over the Arctic. Washington has literally always needed a foothold here. And that foothold materialized into the Thule Air Base, now known as Pachufik. The scale of this is wild. At its peak in the 1960s, this base housed 10,000 people. To put that into perspective, that was nearly 1/3 of Greenland's entire population at the time. The massive expansion of this base actually forced the relocation of local residents, which cemented a long-standing and sometimes pretty tense U.S. military presence. Even today, with fewer troops, it remains a crucial node in the U.S. anti-missile shield. Section 3, the rush for critical minerals. Now, as that ice melts, it's opening up faster shipping routes and uncovering a literal treasure trove beneath the surface. Just take the number 43. Out of the 60 minerals the U.S. categorizes as critical for modern technology, green energy, and defense systems, a staggering 43 of them are found right here in Greenland. That is an absolute game changer for global supply chains. And because of that, a really tense geopolitical reality is playing out right now. The U.S. is heavily focused on defense and securing those 43 critical minerals. But look at China. They're pushing their Polar Silk Road initiative to maintain dominance in rare earth supplies. Russia is busy reopening Soviet-era military bases and trying to control new ice-free shipping lanes. And Europe? Well, they're so anxious about protecting their borders that Denmark is actively shifting to buy European air defense systems, like French and Italian tech, instead of American ones. That is a massive shift in military trust. Let's zoom in on what everyone is digging for. The Quanner Soup deposit in Narsok contains highly sought-after rare earth minerals like neodymium and dysprosium. These are absolutely essential for electric vehicles and defense systems, which is huge as China tightens its export rules. But here's the catch. These valuable minerals are mixed with uranium, and that creates a massive complication. Section 4, the push for independence. Which brings us to the Greenlanders themselves. They've made it very clear. They don't want to be Danes and they don't want to be Americans. They just want to be independent Greenlanders. But they face a really tough economic dilemma. To achieve true independence from Denmark, Greenland has to replace the 54% of its national budget that currently comes from outside grants, mostly from Denmark and the EU. So you can see why that underground mineral wealth we just talked about is incredibly tempting for a budding nation looking to pay its own way. This exact issue has sparked a fierce local debate over the Quantarsut mine. On one side, you have the promise, immense wealth, a century of profits, and full independence. But on the flip side, you have the threat, radioactive uranium dust blowing into the ocean and destroying the local ecosystem. This debate was so intense, it actually led to a national ban on uranium mining in Greenland, which then triggered a massive $11 billion lawsuit from the Australian mining company that held the license. And you can completely understand the fear when you realize that an overwhelming 90% of Greenland's exports rely entirely on the pristine waters of their fishing industry. It's literally the absolute lifeblood of their economy. You just can't risk contaminating the ocean when everything depends on it. You also really can't grasp Greenland's intense desire for self-determination without understanding their traumatic colonial history. Back in the 1960s, the Danish healthcare system administered a forced contraception campaign. Around 4,000 Greenlandic women and girls, some as young as 12, were fitted with IUDs, many without full knowledge or consent, just to drastically decrease the local birth rate. Now, the Danish Prime Minister did recently issue a formal apology for this, but the deep mistrust it fostered, that remains an incredibly powerful driver for independence today. Section 5. The real global stakes. Now, let's zoom out for a second, because while nations bicker over borders and minerals, there's a terrifying twist that makes all these political arguments look incredibly small. The Arctic is currently warming 2 to 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. Experts are warning we could very soon see a summer with effectively no sea ice at all. This rapid warming creates a devastating feedback loop. Less white ice to reflect the sun means the dark ocean absorbs more heat, which in turn warms our planet even faster. And this brings us to a really powerful point from geoscientist Paul Byerman, who totally hit the nail on the head. He says, the real value of Greenland is actually its ice. Think about that. While superpowers are fixated on the land, the critical minerals, and the new shipping lanes, the single most important thing on this entire island for the survival of humanity is simply keeping it frozen. Why? Well, if Greenland's massive ice sheet melts and slides off the land into the ocean, global sea levels will rise by up to an apocalyptic 7 meters. 7 meters. To put that into perspective, that level of melt would displace an estimated 500 million people worldwide. Try to wrap your head around that for a second. 500 million people. It would create unimaginable global migration crises and cost trillions upon trillions of dollars. And we're already seeing this local to global ripple effect in real time. In Greenlandic towns like Ilulissat, the foundations of houses are literally cracking and sinking right now due to melting permafrost. But that local tragedy echoes across the entire globe because the loss of Greenland's ice directly translates to the sinking of island nations like the Maldives. It's a true global tragedy, and it's unfolding right in front of us in our lifetime. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. As the world rushes in to exploit a melting, mineral-rich frontier, we might be completely ignoring the very thing keeping our planet afloat. While superpowers fight over the resources beneath the ice, who is protecting the ice itself? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.